BBC London News, 35 beatings before domestic violence is reported. Now, your old mobile phone could save lives.
One time he actually pinned me down to the floor and he had an axe over my head and he said, "I'm going to kill you." He threw things at me. I'd get drinks poured over my head.
Advice too for women suffering from mental or physical abuse that's coming up.
An estimated 1 in 4 women will experience it in their lifetime.
Massive media coverage of domestic violence is sweeping the UK, Europe and the States, and there are plenty of vultures around to capitalise on it. Even Jamelia cashes in with her cute track. According to every news story, advert, campaign or speech you'll hear about domestic violence, men are the perpetrators, women are the victims. End of story, good night Vienna. But is that really it? Is that the whole story? I'm not so sure. It seems to me that domestic violence is nothing like as simple as it's presented. Domestic violence, where it actually occurs, is surely an issue that affects people, not an issue that affects only women. It turns out that when you begin to look into domestic violence and assess the figures, it becomes clear that women actually commit more acts of violence than men do, and women are particularly guilty when it comes to violence against children and babies. Why do we never see this on the BBC News? We're never told these things and many others. We can't be told, because that would detract from the purposes of those who seek to craft a very particular message against men for very particular reasons. To these people, men are only allowed to be guilty of domestic violence. All evidence to the contrary be damned. The government knows the truth, and the people that control the media know. In fact, anyone that works in the domestic violence industry knows. And yet, despite all of this knowledge about the truth of domestic violence, it's presented exclusively as a male-on-female phenomenon. The question is why? Why is the male aggressor, female victim paradigm the only story ever told about domestic violence? For example, the modern-day understanding of the rule of thumb. Feminism tells us that the rule of thumb was that a man was permitted in law to beat his wife with a cane, so long as it was no thicker than the width of his thumb.
I just don't think I could bear to be a married woman and give up all my assets to a man who was legally allowed to beat me and rape me and whom I couldn't divorce.
How can this woman actually believe that it's ever been accepted in society for men to beat and even rape their wives? How can she believe that men would ever want to be like this? How many other women believe something so ridiculous? Never in English law has wife-beating been legal. What happened was that a single judge in England, around 1782, did indeed make a statement approving of a man disciplining his wife, and at the time his view was dismissed and was publicly embarrassed. That's why we even know about this one comment from one judge 230 years ago, because of the newspaper records ridiculing his opinion. Women were never oppressed in this way. An example of real oppression that was occurring at that time was actually against husbands, not wives. Until the 1900s, if a woman committed a tort, which is a civil crime such as failure to pay a debt, her husband was punished for it. Men were held to account for anything any member of their family did, and this could include his imprisonment for his wife's behaviour. But this suppression of men received no modern-day attention whatsoever, compared with many stories of female oppression in years past. What makes the rule of thumb a particularly malicious slur against all men and masculinity is that the opposite has always been true. The male code has always included, never hit a woman.
I would feel like less of a man. I would feel like some kind of wimpy girl man.
Did you hit your sister?
No, Ma, I was watching the hockey game and...
Boy, I don't care what game you were watching. I'm raising men in this house, and men do not hit women.
Most men are not going to hit a woman at the end of the day. If she's starting something, then they'll attack me. That's the way it works. Women have always been able to count on protection from men, and still do. The myth of the rule of thumb is a hate crime against men, and there are many others.